Welcome to the unique world of doing dyslexia differently, where we unravel the many facets of dyslexia in small, digestible bites, challenge stereotypes, and create a brighter future for our children. We'll focus on fostering your child's mindset, confidence, and self-esteem so they can reach their full potential in and out of the classroom. Let's challenge the status quo, break down the barriers, and unravel the spectrum of possibilities. I'm your host, Bernadette Haig, and together we can do dyslexia differently. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Doing Dyslexia Differently podcast. If you're new to this space, I am so happy you're here. Welcome. I really hope that you can take something away from this episode that will help both you and your child on your dyslexia journey. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. So today I want to discuss the often controversial topic of homework. There's always a lot of conversation within the communities about whether we should be pushing for homework, whether we shouldn't be doing homework, the emotional and often relationship challenges that come with pushing your child to do homework. And I just want to discuss that a little bit and then go over some of my top tips and how I've navigated that journey with my son. I think first and foremost, what we need to do as parents is trust ourselves, trust the feeling that we have, trust our intuition, and let our relationship with our child be the guide. If you're feeling that pushing and forcing your child to do homework each and every day after school is having an impact on your relationship with your child, it's having an impact on their emotional well-being, then trust that feeling. I think before we even go any further into tips and tricks and different things that we can do to support them, I think that feeling that you have is telling you what you need to do. So first and foremost, always trust yourself and that feeling. I guess it's no surprise really that for our children that go to school, and particularly in those early primary years where they're constantly challenged by literacy-based tasks, and there is a huge spotlight on all of the things that are challenging for children with dyslexia. It's honestly no surprise that by the end of their 7-hour day that they come home and their cup is empty, they're emotionally spent, and that isn't just about what they're doing in the classroom. That's also about their social interactions. If they're having challenges with friendship groups or feel like they're not fitting in, or they're in spirals of shame and embarrassment, and all of those things are such challenging aspects of growing up in mainstream school environments. So it really is no surprise. And I think holding empathy and compassion for that is the absolute priority to really understand why they may come home and have these outbursts of emotional and seemingly outrageous behaviours. It really is just their way of expressing how hard their day has been. And I did learn a long time ago that is often a reflection of the fact that when they come home, they feel safe. It's a safe place for them to be able to release what they've been holding on to all day, because they can't express that at school. So I hold that really tightly for both of my children when they're having those moments of meltdowns. And that doesn't mean that sometimes it's not frustrating, but it's that they feel safe enough to do it. And I never ever want to take that away from them. So my first point will be to make is that safety has to come first, and that is their emotional and psychological safety. And for a lot of children, school isn't that place. So home needs to be. It really, really does. So if homework is interfering with that feeling of safety for them, it's really a hard no for me. My son, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but that was very much the journey for him. He was doing up to 10 hours of additional therapies and literacy-based work a week through multi-lit and speech therapy and OT and additional literacy-based tasks at school. There was absolutely no way I was going to allow pressure to be put on him to come home after a huge day to then do additional homework, where I had to become the bad guy, so to speak, to say, you have to do this, you have to sit down and do this, you have to try harder, you have to push. I just do not believe there is any benefit in that whatsoever. I think for parents, particularly those raising children with dyslexia, it's often assumed that we need to become the educator or the solver of the so-called problem, and that is absolutely not the case. Our role is so much more important than that as parents. We are our children's safety net. So that is the absolute first tip. And if that resonates, then I strongly suggest that homework just becomes a hard no. And that may not be forever. For me, the way that I navigated that early on was that I said I had told school it wasn't a negotiable, that he would not be doing any more homework because of the amount of work he was doing outside of school as it was. And fortunately, I didn't have too much pushback on that. And for a while, there was quite a few months where there was nothing. He came home from school and I really focused on teaching him regulation techniques. So regulating his nervous system, regulating his emotions, really allowing him to have downtime. Once I could see that that had become habitual and a bit of a ritual for him, that he would come home and you'd just see the weight sort of fall off his body and he'd just slot into our afternoon routine, and there was no more of those big meltdowns and strong feelings. Then we started to do physical activity. He also has ADHD, and I know for a fact that the more physical outlet he has, that the better that is for him and definitely for his sleep. So we started doing regular afternoon physical activity, which definitely helped. And then gradually, very, very gradually, I started to introduce other forms of literacy sort of sprinkled into daily life. And it wasn't like, we need to sit down and do this. It was, hey, let's think about what things he's interested in and how I can integrate a little bit of literacy into learning about these things that he's interested in. So as an example, he absolutely loved Pokemon at a certain time, and quite amazing for a child that struggles with working memory. His memory of Pokemon names was absolutely phenomenal. And if anyone that knows anything about Pokemon, you'll know that the names are not particularly dyslexia friendly, and they certainly don't follow our standard literacy rules. So it was a challenge for me and my dyslexic brain as well. But he loved it. We would sit down and he would read different books. I got, Pokemon encyclopedias and all sorts of stuff, and he would read things to me. I would read things to him. He would write down the names in his little book. So they were all literacy-based tasks. They weren't relevant to what school was giving us, but he was doing it, and he was doing it very willingly. So we ran with it. We started reading comics together at night before bed. I've always been a keen reader myself before bed. So for both of my children, that's something that I like to do. He was really interested in comics, so we got into comics and we did that. He also showed an interest in cooking. So of a night or two a week, I'd get him involved in cooking. He would look at a recipe. He would try and read the words of a recipe without any hesitation. So again, it was just sprinkling those little bits of literacy in and around things, games, whatever it may be, that would help bolster that. Something that I did very early on was I've always got subtitles on the TV, and that's just exposure to language, exposure to words. And still now he's quite a proficient reader, but he will still watch TV with subtitles on, which I think is great. I think the other thing that's important to note, there was a discussion with him early on in that process once I had said to school that homework wasn't an option for him at that stage. I did sit down with him and explain why I had decided that it was for his well-being, but that didn't mean that he was able or could go to school and say to friends, I don't have to do homework, and have a one-upmanship in that regard. I was really quite explicit about that. This was about him learning differently, and that means that the way we structure his time is differently. And whilst he wasn't doing homework, he was doing therapies and tutoring and those sorts of things. So I think that's a good conversation to have. And then in each and every meeting I would have with teachers for his, individual learning plan, I would always reiterate that homework would not be an option for that term or that semester. And for those that it's relevant to as well, I was also on the same path with a second language. He was in a school where language was very, very important and a high focus, but I took him out of all second language classes, and that's when I would put him into a tutoring or a therapy session or multi-lit or whatever it might be, because again, it just was not a good use of his time or his energy to be focusing on learning Mandarin when he still wasn't reading and writing in English. And I know a lot of parents in the community resonate with that. So I think there's lots to consider. It is very individual based, and I know different schools have different opinions and feelings on this, but ultimately as the parent, we really have to advocate and unfortunately sometimes fight for what we know is right and for what our child needs. And going back to what I said at the start, I think this is really about trusting your own intuition and your own feelings. And if it is impacting your relationship with your child and your child's feeling of safety and comfort at home, home really is a space for living and feeling at home and safe and cared for. And if it's starting to impact those things, then I think you have really every right to say this is not working for us at the moment, so we won't be doing it. So I hope this is helpful and you can take something away that will help you and your child on the homework journey. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out on social media or email. I love hearing from the community, and we shall chat again soon. Bye for now. Thanks for listening. I hope you were able to take something away from this episode that will help both you and your child. If so, please be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes, and jump over to daringdyslexic.com.au to join my free community, where each week I send you one practical action you can take to shift the dial on your child's confidence, self-esteem and mindset. It's 100% free and 100% actionable. That's all for now. I look forward to connecting again soon.